This next example, go back over to Google Images, Photos, and this one is of New York. And this is the Underground Railroad, some of the counties, Saratoga, Warren County, and Washington County. It shows points north from New York City. So Saratoga and Warren County, Saratoga. We know that the Sacandaga Lake is in Saratoga County, and we know that Edinburg is very close by to Sacandaga River, so we can make that connection there. It wouldn't have been a far travel by horse and buggy, or by carriage, or by covered wagon to go from any points in Saratoga or Warren County to Edinburg. You're only talking about maybe 20 miles. It could have been done in a few hours during that time period. Maybe a little bit longer, but within 4 hours you would have gotten at any point in Saratoga or Warren County to Edinburg. So I want to get out of there. There's that photo again, and we're going to go over, and I want to show you this example. These you're going to go into Google. You're going to stay right in Google. We're going to stay right in Google. So Google is an amazing tool. You're just going to type in list of historic homes, places for the Underground Railroad, New York State, and list is going to come up. You're going to see this list, and I'm going to show you. Right there, you're going to see that. You're going to see Farmington Quaker Friends Meeting Home in Farmington. You're going to see that. You're going to see George and Rebecca Barnes House, Syracuse. Garrett Smith National Historic Landmark, Peterborough. Harriet Tubman Home, Auburn. Howard Lynn Stone Store Museum, Aurora. These are all in New York. Hunt House, Waterloo, John Brown Farm, Lake Placid, John W. Jones Museum, Elmira. These are all located in New York. And John Brown's and the Elmira one are very close to Edinburg. And we've already talked about John Brown. We've already talked about how close that is in proximity. Yeah, it's quite the travel, but these are all located in New York State. So there's a great example there. And we're going to get out of there. And my next example is going to be, this is the electronic edition, and it's from Sarah Hopkins Bradford, and it's from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Copyright 2000, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Once again, copyright 2000, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And Sarah Bradford was an author, obviously, and she wrote extensively about not only Harriet Tubman, but the Underground Railroad. And the URL for that, I'll give you that right now, so that way I don't have to read it off to you. There's that. And this talks in length about Harriet Tubman, her journeys. You can read it. You can read that at your leisure. She is a primary source for anything regarding the Underground Railroad. That's why I'm sharing that today. And once again, I just want to read off the title here. This is the first edition, and it's Academic Affairs Library, University of North Carolina. Title page, Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. written by Sarah H. Bradford, Auburn, New York. W.J. Moses, printer, 1869. And call number, and apparently this is located at Perkins Library, Duke University. And we see that call number is 326.92 Thomas 885B, Perkins Library, Duke University. I wanted to make that connection, give our props to Duke University, and that is that example. That is not a first-hand account of Harriet Tubman's life, because it's not written by Harriet Tubman, but Bradford followed her life extensively. She wrote about her a few times in her life, and so that's that. Make sure we got all of our documentation. And once again, it's copywritten. Sorry about the copyright. It's 2004 by the University Library, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And that's right there on the bottom. So there's my next example, which is probably my most proving and most what I would say poignant and probably greatest example that I'm going to show you today, is from a book entitled Eastern New York, All Outdoors Atlas and Field Guide, written by let me get over there. Sorry about that. It's Eastern New York, All Outdoors Atlas Field Guide, written by Sportsman's Collection, and it was published by Sportsman's Collection August 27th, 2016. And we're gonna get over here, and we're gonna go 79, page 79 through 80, and we're gonna see. So we're back over here to that Eastern Google Books, and that is, let's see if we can find a copyright. I apologize about that, and let's see if we can find a copyright there. Apps, Eastern Book. Continuing in our example here that I spoke of, page 79 and 80, and that's and we're going to be looking at covered bridges, and I want to zoom up here. Talks about covered bridges in New York State, the Empire State. And that's just one example of one covered bridge. We're going to scroll down, and Really? Come on. So yeah, we're back at that example, Eastern New York, all outdoors Atlas Field Guide, and you're just going to go to the search where you can search and just type in Copeland Covered Bridge, and it's come up with one example, and it's on page 79 and 80. That Copeland Covered Bridge is not only a part of the old military road, which we talked about in the last couple sessions, but it also mentions that it was a part of the Underground Railroad route during the time period in question. So that is a perfect reference to what we have been talking about, to proving the Underground Railroad's significance. Hello again, welcome again to another segment in addition to Adirondack Natives Historic Preservation. Once again, this is the Earl. We're once again talking about Edinburg, the Barker Store, and its continued historical contribution to not only the Underground Railroad, slaves escaping from the South, and just that idea of slavery, and how slaves escaped into the North and were housed and released and gone into Canada. And some of the mission here, or maybe the main mission here at Adirondack Natives Historic Preservation, is to tell the truth of history. And if we can do that, or somewhat do that, then we've left our mark on history. And I think that's the focal point of why I do what I do. So today I want to do that, and I just want to bring up some examples. Go over to your internet, your laptop, computer, sit down, grab yourself a cup of coffee, and spend the next few minutes with me as we explore history, local history, the Underground Railroad. We're going to go over, first of all, to a website called northcountryundergroundrailroad.com/SaratogaCounty.php. I'll do an up close there for you so you can see that URL a little bit better. And there it is, Underground Railroad, PHP. And this just gives some sites of significance in Saratoga County. First, the Old Stone Church in Milton was an anti-slavery meeting place. Looking through here, you can research the information at your leisure. But I just want to scroll down here. Got a lot of information to cover today. The Maury House. There's a picture of it right there, as we can see. I'm going to scope into that so you can see that. And then the Wayside Inn, located on the Wilton Road in Wilton, New York. And then we have an 1849 detailed note from a Mrs. Lida Francis Sherman, Laydia, Francis, Frances Sherman, Sherman, lived in Hadley, and she gives a detailed note here, a manuscript regarding the Underground Railroad, Luzerne, North River, Essex County, relating to Solomon Northrop, Anti-Slavery Society. So this is some of the information that I have just most recently come across that is contributing to our ongoing discussion about the Underground Railroad, Saratoga County, Essex County, Minerva, John Brown, Garrett Smith. This is all connected, and we can connect it through not only archival information, but we can connect it through historical associations. We can connect it through local historians. So it's well documented information. And then I want to move over to, and this example is from the freedomcenter.org, and this is kind of a long URL. You're going to want to pull up a new screen for this, or just do a new tab, whatever's easier for you. And this is kind of, like I said, a long URL, so I'm just going to scroll across there, freedomcenter.org. Hopefully you can see all that. Underground Railroad, station. Well, that's the URL for that, and the copyright for that is going to be copyright 2004 through 2018 National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, and that's located in Cincinnati, Ohio. And this website was funded by the U.S. Department of Education Underground Railroad Educational and Cultural Program, URR. So this is just talks about Warren County, Henry Thomas and Nancy Butterworth. Talks about them having, and their family contributed lands in Hamilton Township. Hamilton is in New York State, western New York State during the Civil War. It talks about their home being historical stop for the Underground Railroad. So that's another connection in New York State that I wanted to point out that I more recently found. And once you find this document, you can go through this and look at it at your leisure. But it just documents there was many different stops, and that's my connection here with this specific example. There was many different stops throughout New York State that many historians have documented, and this is just another one. You may be aware of this, but I was once again most recently have been brought to my attention. So we're going to go over here. I'll get out of there, and next we're going to go over to a previous example that I have used, which is rendered a name of Amos Elliott Barker, and we're going to do a little research on him today as well too, and see how he's connected to all this. And you're just going to go over to colinmiller.com and type in John Barker. That's Colin, COLIN, L Miller, MILLER.com. The URL that comes up once you find this page is right there, colinmiller.com. Family, Barker, John Barker, B1800.html. And just going to go over there and look down, and we're going to scroll down, and this is just a genealogical information that Mr. Miller has established and has documented. And Amos Barker was related to John and William Fayette Barker, and we talked about John in an extent. We've talked about William to some degree as well too. And this is once again a genealogical information or report that Mr. Colin Miller, L. Miller, has established. Now from there, we want to look at, and at first when I looked at this, I didn't think that this was going to have much to offer as far as historical significance. This specific book. So we're going to go over to Google Books, and you're going to type in Nathaniel Bartlett Sylvester. The first name Nathaniel, Nathaniel, middle name Bartlett, last name Sylvester. The name of his book, which was written in 1878, is History of Saratoga County, New York, with biographical sections in some of its prominent men and pioneers. So once you find that, you're going to be able to preview the books. You're going to click on that, which is right there, as we can see, and then that's going to bring you over to sort of a blank page, and you're going to go over, and this is the same book, Nathaniel, and you're going to just type in Amos Baker, and there's 14 results for Amos Baker. Page 373, page 374, there's page 86, 500, 256, 257, it goes to pages 372, page 380, I'm sorry, not 3, but 83, page 290, page 288, 85, 376. There's 14 of these that link Amos Baker to what we're discussing here today. You can do a further research on this, but let's just type in Underground Railroad. Underground Railroad. I've already did some of this earlier, so that's why that's coming up. Let's see if it no Underground Railroad. Let's see if we just take the word New York out of there. No Underground Railroad. Let's see if we type in slaves. This is kind of exciting today. This is new information that I have found, and I just wanted to do some research here today to find out whether or not there's any connections to Amos Baker, slavery, the Underground Railroad in Edinburg, anything like that. Let's do slavery. Alright, let's do slaves. And yep, we have 13 results for slaves too, as well too. So this book is a huge find, and would require further referencing, historical research. Slaves in New York. Slaves in New York. Seven references, and some of the same pages come up. So we're going to go to the first page, and this is after I've typed in slaves in New York, and we're going to go to the first, and that's page 46. I'm going to zoom in here and see what this is talking about. So continuing with our book, and I found several, once again, the Nathaniel Bartlett Sylvester book, The History of Saratoga County. I found several different references, not only to Edinburgh, slaves, and New York State. So we're gonna just go through some of this here today. And once again, you're in Google Books. You're gonna look up Nathaniel Bartlett Sylvester, and I spelt that name for you already. And I just want to come over here, and I already given you. Didn't I already given you? I thought I gave you. We got to make sure we give our proper documentation. uh, the history of Saratoga County. Back to that, the same book we've been looking at. I just wanted to get proper documentation for that. Our first example or documentation is the State Historical Society of Wisconsin. Scroll down here. Has a date of 1609. I'm sure that's probably a date. It's a history of Saratoga County, New York, and I've already said by Nathaniel Burlett, Sylvester, Philadelphia, Everetts, and Ensign, Ensign, 1878. Very old book. It was entered according to Act of Congress in the year 1878 by the author in the office of the Library of Congress at Washington, D.C. And then it goes to the prefix. So that's our citation and our props for who has it, and make sure we have documentation of document everything we're doing. We don't want anybody pressing legal matters here. First of all, we're going to look into Edinburg, New York. We're just going to type in Edinburg, New York here in the search, and that's Edinburgh, New York. Sometimes it's spelled without the H, sometimes it's spelled with the H. And you're just going to have to research that each item you come up with to see if it correlates with it. And if it says New York, it's the same place. And then on page 376, talking about Edinburgh, then it talks about right here, soldiers of 1861 through 1865, and we know that to be the Civil War time period. And it just gives the list of soldiers, their name, where they were from, and let's see. Whoa. And about halfway down, there is a, it looks like, let me see if I can find it. There is a Calvin Brown. He was a private. We're going to pull this up. He was a private, Company D, 4th H. It looks like artillery, and it was discharged. And it has him living in Edinburgh. So there's one example of soldiers from the Civil War from Edinburgh. So we're going to back out of that. And there's another one. There's several of them here. There's 2 more, 3 more, 4 more. War of 1812. Marion, Myron, White, White, died in Edinburgh. Was part of the War of 1812. Nathaniel Robinson, Edinburgh. Ephraim Porter, P-O-T-T-E-R, or Potter, I'm sorry. First name Ephrain, Let me make sure I'm spelling that correctly. My computer's having technical difficulties today. Yeah, Ephraim Potter, Potter, moved to Black River County and died. Nathaniel Robinson, he was from Edinburg. He was part of the War of 1812. Looks like W.M. Hill or William Hill. He was a part of all that. So this just goes on and talks about Edinburg. Edwin C. And I'm gonna. If you just scroll down on that, on the next page, you're gonna see Edwin C. And I can't. Looks like Reasguie was a private. Fourth looks like H artillery. September 3, 1962. He lost his health while service and became invalid. There's several here, so I'm going to get out of that. You can research that at your leisure, but there's several connections. If you just type in Edinburg, that Edinburg references produces 9 results. The slaves in New York State, that produced. If you type in slavery, you either do dash or I just did a space. Slavery 1830, that comes up with 1 example. Slavery comes up with 14 examples. This is the same book we've been talking about. This is a wealth of information, and I would consider this as close as you're going to get to a first-hand account of not only of this area but of slavery, the Underground Railroad. This is an amazing find. So, if you're not excited, I am. Our next example is you're going to go over, once again, open up a new window. You're going to go over to, and I'm going to spell it for you, Gutenberg.org, Gutenberg, I believe that's pronounced, Gutenberg.org, and I'll show you the URL. So in case you can't find it, if you type in that URL, you're going to come right to what I'm going to show you. You should be able to go to that original page, or that what I would consider home page, and type in the title of this book. It's The Underground Railroad from Slavery to Freedom, A Comprehensive History, and it's by Wilbur H. Siebert, Siebert, and you're going to have a couple different ways you can access it, and the best one I think is the HTML. Some of these Kindle, some of these other ones may be more appropriate for you, but I found the HTML, the first one, to be the best. And the next window, after you click on the HTML, it's going to come up just like this. And this is a great find, and I'm going to recommend this as another example of not only the Underground Railroad but slavery, and just the study of it. Mr. Siebert has contributed a lot of information, not only to the history of Warren County, but the history of the United States, the Underground Railroad, slavery, and just to that whole idea and that whole time period, and we just begin to understand his contribution. So we want to give him proper documentation. And once again, it's by Wilbur H. Siebert, Siebert, and it's from the project Gutenberg ebook. It's going to be, and I've already read the title. Released May 24th, 2015, and produced by Susan Shell. And we're just going to scroll down here to the context, and if you can find this once again, and we're going to go over in so we're going to get there. The main chapter that I want to look at today is chapter 10. It talks about the politics. You can read this at your leisure. It just talks about the politics that were involved with the Underground Railroad. This is Harriet Beecher Stowe, how she was involved. This is also an amazing, amazing find. Wonderful artistic wording by Siebert. He has a way of telling history that I don't think I've ever seen as a historian. So this would definitely be, if this is not a primary source document, it should be. As a historian, I would most definitely label it that. I wouldn't consider it a first-hand account because he wasn't there, but it's as close as you're going to get. It's as close as one of these slaves writing down a manuscript and it being found in your backyard. That's how close it is. So we're gonna look through here. And this is all chapter 10. Talks about chapter 10. This talks about how different people are involved. How even as far as John Brown was involved. How the politics. Talks about the fugitive slave law. Talks about slave hunting in free states. This whole chapter is dedicated to the truth behind the Underground Railroad, slavery, and slavery in the North. Many of us think that there wasn't slavery in the North after 1820 or after 1850 or whatever it was. I really don't know the exact date. I think it was 1820 in the 1820s. Well, there was. And we're going to how it even talks about Uncle Tom's Cabin, Underground Road and Uncle Tom's Cabin on from pages 321 to 323. Talks about the summer and the influence of escaped slaves in the North, the split of multi-fractions in the North, and all the way on the bottom, it talks about John Brown's attempt to loot free slaves. And this is where we want to be today. We're going to click over there, and I want to show you something that I only saw about 3 hours ago. And this is going to blow your mind. So on page, we're talking about John Brown, him looting slaves. On pages 339 and 340, and I'm going to read this verbatim. Brown said if the slaves could in this way be driven out of the country, the whole system would be weakened in that state. Reading on, and I quote, all of this I'm quoting, and quote, in this matter, the judgment of the liberator was not at fault. this is not John Brown saying this, but the quote from there was that. And then Seberg goes on to say, in this matter, the judgment of the liberator was not at fault, for it has been estimated that his attack on Harper's Ferry caused the value of slave property in Virginia to decline to the extent of, I'm not sure if, I think this is $10,000. It's 10 quote 100, and you can see that. I'll bring that up for you. That's right there. You can see that. I'm not sure if that's $10 million or $10,000. Probably $10 million. That Brown had the sympathy of a large number of persons in the North, including some public men, was a circumstance calculated to make a deeper impression on the minds of Southern men generally than this decline in the price of Virginia slaves. So he was trying to influence Southern men.
When did she get done?
This could be interpreted different ways, but I would interpret it that Brown was trying to influence Southern men, specifically in Virginia. Once again, we're back here with Seberg, and we're at that last chapter talking about John Brown. And I'm going to scroll up here. And once again, it's that paragraph that I just read from. And I want to read above that. It's talking about John Brown's influence, that he wanted to help the slaves, but by helping them, this is suggesting that he was hurting them. And it's and I think I'm going to read the whole paragraph here. See my cursor right there. Right up here, right there. And so we're going to back out of there. And while the system of the Underground Railroad was thus expanding and pressing everywhere against legislative resistance, there arose a man who sought to solve the whole slavery problem in his own rash way. When John Brown led a company of slaves from Missouri to Canada, despite the attempts to prevent him, and when soon therefore he attempted to execute his plan for the general liberation of slaves, he showed the extreme to which the aid to fugitives might lead. The influence of Brown's training in the Underground Railroad work is plain in the methods and plans he followed, which gave him a place in American history. Early convinced that the action was the thing needed to help the bound man and slave, he set himself to find a way of affecting the destruction of slavery. In devising his scheme, he seemed to have had considered an Underground Railroad channel of escape as a necessary feature of it for those lacking the courage to join the movement, sure to involve them in armed conflict with their master. This feature was designated the Suburban Passway. The varying character of the testimony in regard to this feature, as well as the natural change of view that it took place in Brown's mind with the passage of years does not permit one to say definitely what important was attached by the liberator to the passageway as a part of his plan, but it's utterly in reducing the value of slaves. So it reduced the value of slaves must have been apparent to him. So this is suggesting that he knew the value of the slave would be reduced. So that creates room for doubt. That's room for an argument to say that he was playing both ends against the middle. He was helping slaves, but you can make the final conclusion yourself. Was he hurting them? Was he enslaving them? These are questions we may never know. But this document definitely suggests that. And I'm reading on. That the whole movement in Virginia, Brown said, if the slaves could in this way be driven out of the country, the whole system would be weakened in that state. In this matter, the judgment of the liberator was not at fault, for it has been estimated that his attack on Harper's Ferry caused the value of slave property in Virginia to decline to the extent of the number that we just talked about. That Brown had the sympathy of a large number of persons in the North, including some public men, was a circumstance calculated to make a deeper impression on the minds of Southern gentlemen than on this decline in the price of Virginia slaves. So he was trying to influence the Southern gentlemen. Why was he trying to influence them? What was his cause or reason to influence the Southern gentlemen for slavery? This just produces more question than it does answer anything other than to lead us to believe that John Brown was once again burning both ends against the middle. This creates a huge doubt on what John Brown's mission really was. There's a photo of him, and why he went forth and deliberately raided Harper's Ferry. The eve of the Civil War. Some Civil War historians have said that without John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, the Civil War would have never happened. They've suggested that. I can't name any at this point in time, but there's definitely has been that suggestion. So that's just amazing, amazing, amazing. We're going to go back over to Google Books, and you're going to type in, let me get over there, apologize for that delay. Just go over to Google Books and type in Michigan Historical Collections, Volume 21, Michigan Historical Commission, and produced by Michigan Historical Commission, 1913. This is a very old book. 1913. It's over 100 years old. And I want to get out of there. And we're going to go over and so the Michigan Historical Collections book, Volume 21, the rights and print rights and the copyrights are as follows: Historical Collections, and Researches, Michigan Pioneer and the Historical Society. Reprint, Volume 21, Mrs. M. B. Ferrey, Editor. Ferry, Mrs. M. B. Ferrey, Ferrey, is the editor. There's a state seal of Michigan, reprinted by the authority of Board of State Auditors, and it was published in Lansing, Michigan, Wynkoop. Ballenbeck Crawford Company State Printers, 1912-1913. Wynkoop. It looks like B or BAL or HALENBECK Crawford Company State Printers, 1912. Entered according to the Act of Congress, 1894, by Michigan Pioneer and Historical Society, in the office of the Librarian of Congress at Washington, D.C. So, Library of Congress, Washington, D.C. Pennsylvania State University Library. Looks like is housed in. Want to make sure we give them props. And then we're going to get out of there, and we're going to go over to the search. We're still in the same book. And we're going to just begin to type in some of the things that we've been looking at. The first thing I want to type in the Hudson River. There's 14 results. You can look at them. Let's do slaves in NY. Let's do slaves in New York. No. Well, this is just another example and old manuscript regarding the Underground Railroad. Yes, it's out of Michigan, but we have we have to understand it from all areas. We have to understand the Underground Railroad and slavery and how the Underground Railroad, if we're going to understand it, we need to understand it from every point of view. And Michigan is just one of those points of view, or the state of Michigan, and how they had their part of the Underground Railroad. We type in slaves, it comes up with 8 results. Underground Railroad. Let's do New York. Let's do Underground Railroad. I did New York. Just seeing if there was going to be a reference to Underground Railroad. We come up with two results. So this is also another addition to the books that I've been submitting for the Underground Railroad. This is a good find and requires some more research. So that's the last of that example. I just want to show you some of the people for the Michigan Historical Society. Christopher Blaker, he's the editor. He's a features editor. Amy Bradfield, education program manager. Maureen Burking, MAUREENBUECKING, graphics, multimedia. Director, Chung Ann Canfora, CHONG ANNA, Canfora, KANFORA, Director of Development. Nancy Fieldbush, Director of Communications and Editor-in-Chief. James Hall, Membership Circulation Assistant. These are just some of the people, so it gives faces to the Michigan Historical Society. I like to do that. Give them props. Get out of there. And my next example today, you're going to go over to findagrave.com, and you can type in Captain Richard Winslow Sherman. Captain Richard. Richard is spelled R-I-C-H-A-R-D. Middle name Winslow, W-I-N-S-L-O-W. Last name Sherman, S-H-E-R-M-A-N. And Mr. Sherman was the captain and pilot of a boat that traveled the Hudson River during the time frame that we've been talking about in question. And a lot of his passengers during that time frame were slaves. Here is a very old picture of the Burlington. Let me get back over there. I want to make sure I give. This is the website, and it's copywritten. Excuse me, copyright 2018. Find a grave. So once again, that's findagrave.com. You're going to type in Captain Richard Winslow Sherman. The copyright for that is copyright 2018. Excuse me, find the grave. Copyright 2018. Copyright 2018. Find a grave. And there's different photos there and regarding Captain Sherman, and there's his memorial site there at the grave. And he was a captain of a ship, and it was named the Burlington. And it's right here on page 549. This just gives another avenue for the slaves coming north, especially up the Hudson River. And now we have covered rat wagon bringing them from the south, horseback probably, and now we have by water, and namely Captain R.W. Sherman's ship steamer called the Burlington, made in Burlington, Vermont. And this book is
I'm actually better. After all last week, I'm doing better now.
is get over here.
I do have a mess, but I want to make sure that I do right.
And this is from Google Books, and you're going to look up that, and you're going to look up what I'm about to show you here. Historical Collections, Volume 21, Michigan State Historical Society. Those people that I just showed you a few minutes ago are linked to this. They're a part of the society. And once again, Historical Collections, Volume 21, Michigan State Historical Society, 1894, Michigan. And let's see if we have any other documentation that we need to add.
The guys aren't even supposed to be on there